Welcome to Archery Country Podcast. Welcome back to Archery Country Podcast. This is your host, Wade, as we are hot and heavy right in turkey season, and we said, why not have another turkey podcast? But this time, we're sitting down with the dudes, and one of the main dudes from Phelps Game calls. This is a product that we just brought into all three locations, and also you can find it on our online store. A lot of diaphragm calls for you turkey hunters out there. For those of you that know Phelps, they're worldwide known for their elk calls. Also, they carry a ton of predator calls, whitetail, your grunt tubes, and everything else to go with it. And we're sitting with the marketing manager from Phelps Game Calls, Mr. Dirk Durham, who's on the other line. How you doing, Dirk?
Great. How are you, man?
We're doing awesome. Glad to have you on this. I don't know what the weather. Are you Idaho or Washington?
I'm in Idaho. Yeah.
Okay.
Boise area.
Gotcha. What's the weather like out there?
It's just been kind of hit and miss. You'll get one day it's beautiful and sunny and 70 degrees, and the next day it's 30 degrees. So today's kind of overcast and a little bit about 45, 50 degrees. So.
Well, I got you. So we're not too far off. We're 20-some hours apart, but kind of the same weather. We've been getting rain. Our turkey hunting, as we talked off there a little bit, we're in Season B when you guys are listening to this podcast. For our archery hunters, the way Minnesota works is our archery turkey, you can go all season. So that's from April 13th all the way to May 31st. But we had 80-degree days to kind of start the season. And then all of a sudden we had 8 inches of snow. And then since we've had 40 degrees and rain, 40 degrees and rain. So the birds are, one day they're struck, and then the next day they're cold and huddled up, and they stay on the roost till 9 o'clock in the morning. But we're glad to team up with you guys. Like I said, when it comes to calling turkeys, when it comes to calling anything, the day of your pick and your pot, it still has a place. And when I talk about that, it's a friction call, the slate, glass, crystal, whatever it may be, and also your box call. There's a time and place to have all of those tools in your vest or in your pack. But the day of diaphragm has kind of took off because your hand's free. You can hit so many different notes. You can change on the fly. You can control your volume very, very easily. You can muffle. You can throw a call. Having some pretty good luck in the past with calling techniques and that. And I know, Dirk, you guys are very extensive on all of your testing. And when we say testing, not just standing on a stage and calling, but also field testing. But if you wouldn't mind, Dirk, give me a little background about you, where you were brought up hunting and fishing in the outdoors, and then your introduction with Phelps and how long you've been with the company. And then the company, we'll play that road for just a little bit before we get into your actual product.
Yeah, sounds great. I was born and raised here in Idaho, country boy. Grew up in a really small town, had about 800 people in it. I lived about a mile away from where I could hunt elk. And every morning before school, I'd go elk hunting.
That's too bad. Too bad, huh?
I know, right? Everybody else was playing sports, and I was elk hunting, As soon as the bell would ring at the end of the day at school, and I was beating feet home to go elk hunting again. So I hunted 30 days of the season, whether I had a tag or a buddy or family or somebody. I was always out there chasing elk. And then, growing up in Idaho, the first few years I was hunting, turkeys were kind of a myth, right? People said, oh, man, I seen a turkey track the other day. It's like, but did you? But did you really?
Right.
And then I started seeing some turkey tracks here and there. And one day I'm like, I think I was probably like, I don't know, I must have been 13 years old. So this must have been 1987. And I heard a turkey gobble. And I'm like, I think that was a turkey gobble. And I wasn't turkey hunting at the time. We didn't even have I don't even know if we had a turkey season right then. But I was like, man, I've heard you can call those things in, and I want to learn how. So fast forward a few months, and I spent some time in Florida. I have some cousins that live in Florida, and they're big turkey hunters, hunting Osceolas down there.
Oh, yeah.
And I got to join those guys and go hunting down there. And, man, they give me some calls. I learned how to call, and I kind of took right to it. It's kind of natural at running a diaphragm. And it just kind of grew from there. But I didn't kill my first turkey, though, until I was, I must have been about 20 years old. Yeah, I mean, the turkeys were just not real thick where I grew up. And I'd chase them every year, and you'd hear a few gobbles, and just never could put it together. And then finally I killed my first one when I was probably 20 years old, and I've been hooked ever since.
Love it. So when you guys and that was in Idaho?
Yeah, that was north central Idaho. So,
and that's all Merriam's out there?
Yeah. We got some Easterns up there too. So then there's quite a few hybrids running around there. So you got some interesting colors in certain areas.
Right.
So
it's kind of the denominator, back in the day when I really took turkey hunting to heart, being from Minnesota and killing our first couple of birds here, right, were the first time you could ever actually get a tag, and did it with a bow, and back, you look back in the day how much easier it was because birds were never pressured.
Right.
And, you'd step onto a new farm, and even our farm, and it was, you'd squawk on a box call or even try to just make a call, whatever. This is before YouTube and learning how. You just had videos. Like, I remember watching some jury VHSs, and you try to duplicate the call, and all of a sudden there's birds in your lap. And you're like, well, this is easy. So now I'm going to start going to other states. And, we go down to Kansas and Nebraska, and the further south you would get, we'd get into some Rios, and then everyone kept saying these hybrids until you actually, shoot enough birds and can kind of tell the difference on the buff and the cross. And in this country, it's all Easterns. That's basically, every once in a while you'll find a domestic that got crossed with it in the introduction of turkeys into Minnesota. But the first Merriam that I shot was actually in Custer, South Dakota. And
oh, wow.
But it's funny, like you go to Wyoming, and I went to school in Wyoming, and all of a sudden then you'd see a true Merriam, and then you would see a hybrid as far as a strutter, and it's fantastic to me that there is some cross pollination. And even in like Idaho, I would think, that comes to my mind. I've never hunted Idaho, but I'd think all mountains all the time, it's going to be all Merriams. So it's, that's something new.
Yeah, it's interesting. In Idaho, turkeys, that's probably one of their biggest success stories. We went from nothing to when they planted them, transplanted them here, and the population, once it kind of got going, it really took right off. Like in the mid '90s, and early 2000s, it just exploded, and then. I think it kind of ebbs and flows now as far as populations go, just kind of what you see when you're in the woods every year. But we got a very strong presence of turkeys here, so that's pretty cool.
Awesome. So give me a little background of how you got with the company, and how, what is Phelps Game Calls, and the quality that goes behind it. Just a little background on the company.
Yeah. So I competitive elk called for years, and I'm a hardcore elk hunter at heart, right? That's what I live for every September is the bugle. So did really well elk calling over the years at the competitive level, and then very successful in the elk woods too. And once you kind of get social media and things, you start meeting people, and I'd actually met Jason. Jason Phelps, the owner of the company, the founder of the company, at one of the calling competitions, one of the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation calling competitions one year, and then he killed a great big bull in Washington, just a giant Cascade. I don't know if it's a Cascade Roosevelt or I don't know, but it's a giant bull, like a 360 type bull.
Right on.
And at the time, I had co-founded a elk hunting magazine with another guy, and it's called Extreme Elk Magazine. And we're like, hey, Jason, we want that story for the magazine. And he's like, cool, let's do it. So we got him that we got that story from him and ran it in the magazine. And I'd always seen, like, back before Facebook and stuff was big, you probably remember this, like forums, online forums, and they're still pretty popular for folks. But, man, like, you got like both sides, and there was one that was like based in Washington. So all the Washington guys were constantly on this forum talking. And if anybody said, "Hey, what's the best elk call out there? I need an elk call," somebody'd be like, "Oh, Phelps.
Yep.
Phelps, hands down. You need a Phelps call." And I'm like, "Who's this Phelps guy?" Even before I even met him. And then finally, I put two and two together, met him, and we become friends right away, just because he's the greatest, just a great guy, just easygoing, funny, fun to be around. So, fast forward several years, and I wanted a career change, and him and I had been kind of working together a little bit. We came out with a signature elk diaphragm of mine. It's called the Maverick. And I was ready for something different in my career. I was kind of spun out. I was like, yeah, I'm ready to make a change. And he's like, "You know what? I think we're at the point that Phelps Game calls could support that, because very small, mom and pop company at the time." And so I made the move to be the marketing and sales manager there. And that was in 2019, spring of 2019. We'd been kind of working together for a couple of years before that, with the calls, the signature calls and stuff. But so then over the next few years, we've grown the business. And then in 2021, the Meat Eater company acquired Phelps Game Calls. And so we're part of the Meat Eater hunting group now. And so my job is still marketing manager. We got somebody else doing sales and stuff now, so that's great. And but I don't just do marketing. I'm kind of a jack of all trades. Whether it's we're working on product innovation. I'll kind of even jump in a little bit of project management stuff every now and then. Social media. I run all the social media pages, content creation. We do a lot of that, whether I'm in front of the camera or I do a little bit behind the camera, but I do a lot of video editing. Actually, the last few days I've been working on turkey videos, editing that stuff. But, I feel like something gets thrown my way that's not really marketing all the time. But then, that's my official title. So I kind of do a little bit of everything.
So Phelps, obviously, like we said in the intro, known for your elk calls, and you guys have other, segues when we talk about other game to call in there. But in your mind, before we dive into what I got in my hand here, when we talk about a diaphragm call, okay, and correct me at any time if I'm wrong on this, all of your calls are handmade.
Yep.
And then they're hand stretched as far as the latex and hand cut.
Yep. They're built one at a time, built here in USA. All the elk calls are built in Washington, except with the exception of some of the elk calls my wife builds. And then the turkey stuff is built back east. But yeah, they're all built one at a time, hand stretched. It's if you were to sit down and build one, you think, my God, how are these guys selling these things for $10 or $12 a piece? They should sell them for $30. I mean, there's lots of steps to build a
I know.
Or an elk call.
I don't think people, realize that as far as they pick it up, the ingenuity and, back when we got started, I should say, and a diaphragm could be a little bit intimidating, especially when you're talking about elk hunting and you say different latex and not so much a cut, but the different layers and how much they're stepped back to get you that perfect cow tone. And then especially if you're going to bugle through a tube, there's a lot that goes into it. And if you've ever actually, if you haven't, YouTube, check this out on Phelps social media. There's a couple on there. Like you see people using a punch in the press, some of your employees doing it, but things are very meticulous because it has to be layered correctly. It has to be cut correctly. It has to be put together correctly. It is a process to put these together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's kind of a little bit of our secret sauce, between that and then, some companies will say, oh yeah, all the latex comes from the same place. All the tape comes from the same place. But that's not necessarily true. They make latex several parts of the world, right?
Yep.
We source the very best stuff we can find. And if there's a problem, if there's like, oh, well, we can't get you all the latex because there was a tsunami or something.
Yeah.
Then we're like, well, now we're in trouble because we're not just going to grab some other Joe Blow latex and throw on there, because what we found is that having that consistent quality starts with quality materials. And sometimes you just get some stuff that you can make a diaphragm out of it, but nobody's going to like it. You can sell it, but you'll probably never sell another one to that person because it's just going to suck.
Right.
So, we'll do whatever we got to do to make sure that we have the premium ingredients in our calls. And then, like you say, that meticulous, each call hand stretched. We have a little dial indicator that stretches it every single time to the right stretch. And with that attention to detail, that allows you to buy a call today and use it, and you're like, oh yeah, I like that thing. I'm going to buy one next year. You buy another one next year, take it out of the package. It's going to be the same. It's going to have that consistent quality.
Yep.
And I think that's super important because, I haven't blown Phelps calls for my whole life, for sure. And,
right.
And, that's one thing I can tell you is like, not all calls are created equal.
Exactly. And having same story, different sentence, I guess you could say, or different page, being in a pro shop, especially where we live, and as much as we get to hunt and go about it, having the availability of calls every year, we're getting new products in, but we very rarely get new products such as this. In the first pack, Jack and I opened them up here in the store, and Jason, actually our ordering manager up in Brainerd, he called me when he was at the show, and he's like, dude, have you ever tried any of Phelps stuff? And I said, well, elk hunting, yeah. But, like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, have you ever tried their turkey calls? I'm like, no. I said, are they there? And he's like, yeah, dude, we placed this huge order. I'm like, phenomenal. I said, send them here. Let's play. Well, I wasn't in it. He picked up some. I don't know if he picked them up from you or one of your guys down there. And this is how geeked out we are. He's on the phone, like doing some yelps and some cuts to me and doing a soft purr, and I'm like, awesome. I said, send me one. He's like, well, I only got one. And I'm like, well, don't send me that one. Like, I'll wait, But, no, we got them in, and Jack and I opened up some packages, and I'd heard and done some research. Some buddies of mine from out west, they're like, they really, really like the black bat. And I was like, okay, cool. So I grabbed one of those, and it just that raspy roll, that fulfilled call. Sometimes you can get a real high pitched squeak. You put them in your mouth and you get them kind of broke in and softened up. But right out of, I'm talking 30 seconds to a minute with saliva help. It's just a really, really fulfilled raspy roll. And then I dove into like your Parrish 3-pack and, just tried a few, but the ease of use, the quality of sound, the true tone pitch, and don't get me wrong, and come in on this at any time, Dirk. You can go anywhere and grab a call, right? And you can go out and practice in your truck or practice at home if your wife allows it. You can make sounds. But if you're an avid turkey hunter, if you're a brand new rookie, or even if you're a veteran stage caller, there's sounds that only certain calls can hit. Do you agree with me on that?
Yeah, definitely. I'm not like an advanced turkey caller, so there's a few calls I can't even make. Like if you want to purr or something, I don't even have I don't have my uvula, right? When I had my tonsils taken out, they cut that thing out too, so I can't do that little roll. So I can't do a purr with a diaphragm.
Okay.
On it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely, some nuance there but the funny part about it is like you find some guys that are like, oh, I really love that trip and hen, or I like the combo cut on the rip and red for doing the certain calls. So I think that's the cool nuance about diaphragms and all the different, especially turkey diaphragms, you got all the different cuts. Some guys, they just operate a certain cut a little different or a little better for the different calls. So, and we find that with elk calls too.
Absolutely. And that's where you and I can kind of pick this whole podcast apart is you're a phenomenal elk caller and with a diaphragm, and there's notes and keys and this and that I elk hunt every 6-7 years. So I don't like overly get excited living in the Midwest and practice all the time. Like it does, it comes easy, but I can make like 3 of your basic 7. But when, and in turkey hunting, that we do it all the time. Now I obviously don't call in the fall, but when you're teaching younger generations or bringing my boys up, or even when we have guys and gals come in the shop, it's super easy to grab a friction call, a pick and a pot, and make a sound and get them within 5 minutes, get them to where they can be pretty lethal, right?
Oh, yeah.
But a diaphragm, it might take 2 or 3 days before they can ever get that yuck, and get it so they produce that. But once they do, then the sky's the limit. What I have found, and we'll dive into your calls. I got to ask you about some of these names on some of this stuff. Kudos, pretty creative. But you guys, it's not just, I don't want listeners to hear this and say, well, I'm not a stage caller. Like I'm brand new and I don't want to be embarrassed. There are certain calls. We sell them in 3-packs. We sell them in singles. So you don't have to go bow-legged and broke buying these things. But there are some calls that are easier for a new kind of a rookie status caller. If you've never done it before, there's some calls where you're going to produce easier sounds. You're going to get that sound easier. Like my boy, I got him a Casper. You're familiar with that. And
yeah, I love that one.
And just all I did is took a scissors and kind of cut the band out so it was a little bit smaller for his profile of the roof of his mouth. And, it was, and he's done it before. He knew what the sounds wanted to make. He just couldn't make the sound. But, now we've had him for a couple weeks and it's almost annoying, how good he's gotten, but he just keeps going and going and going with it. And another good one that's great for, just say your beginner caller, is just a standard straight. And you guys call it the straight deuce. It's a double reed system, but just a straight, and it makes an incredibly nice, rich sound.
Yeah. Not a lot of rasp, but it doesn't take a lot of air to make it go. And same with that Casper, man. That's a nice call. And a lot of folks love that thing because you can get so soft with it. I like it a lot for TTs. It's just a really good call, and I can get a little bit raspy if I want to sound like a young hen, but I don't get too much rasp like some of the others. I can, if I want to really sound like a mean old hen, I can grab like my black bat or a rip and red or something and go that way.
So again, talking to our new callers, like it won't take you very long to establish a cadence. If you want any advice that I can give you, and Dirk, chime in on this, they're like, we talk Grand National turkey callers and the NWTF stage calling. A lot of times, like the judges will give them what we call a sequence or, portray this in the woods, and they'll give them a scenario that they have to paint without a paintbrush. They got to do it with sounds. So when you're listening to stage callers, there's a lot more that goes on. And remember, they're trying to impress humans.
Right.
In the turkey woods, basically, if you can do a yelp and maybe incorporate a little bit of the cut, to get excited or excited yelp, you got her kind of licked. Now,
100%.
so you don't have to, we talk about like a key run. Well, you don't have to have that. You don't have to do it. Is it in the right situation? Cool. Absolutely. But and when we talk about 20 years of killing turkeys, I probably used it 3 or 4 times. And basically just as a desperation or a locator for a hen, calling hens to it. But your standard yelp and a cut, if you can get to it, do you have to purr? If you can't purr with a diaphragm, there's no problem. You can just pick up, like I have in front of me, the meat eater, the slate glass pot call, with a little scratch of the Scotch-Rite pad and rough that up there. You can purr like any champion ever. I promise you.
Oh yeah. That's how I do my purrs with it. That's how I do my purrs with it.
Why not? You control the volume. You control, how fast or how slow. And there's situations, the more that you turkey hunt, there's going to be situations where a gobbler, especially if you're archery hunting, a gobbler may hang up at that 35, 45 yard line. And you want to kind of close the distance. They may see your decoys, but either they're a tom that's been beat, battled, and bruised by a rat pack, or maybe it's just a really cautious tom, or it's the big boss tom, and he's like, well, I have hens over here, but I see your hens over there, and you might have a 3/4 strut Jake or a full strutter out. You need something to coax him, and that's when you can explore other cadences, other calls. We all know that you could walk out in most any timber and do an excited cut, and if there's a bird within a couple 100 yards, you might get a shot gobble out of them, especially this time of year.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And when we say that, you can use different calls. You can do everything with one call, but you could use different calling sequences for different situations. If you had to do a fighting purr, sometimes they'll close that gap just a little bit more and help you. But it's not don't be intimidated or scared, and especially with these products. It's something that it's for me, 90% of what I do is going to be a stick and a string, right?
Right.
I like my hands free. I like to be able to have my hand on a release on my bow, throw my call with my offhand. If I need to muffle it and bring it back, I can do that. Like you said, there's certain situations where you have to use your slate. And that's just fine. But that last 30 seconds before the kill strike goes on, you may have to do a coax, or you may have to cut just to bring his head up, or whatever it may be. Being able to do it hands-free, it's just less stuff you got to bring into the timber or into the field. And that's where we start talking about the diaphragms.
Yep, absolutely.
How did you guys... go ahead.
I was going to say, here's the fun fact about the diaphragms. Our diaphragm. So Jason contacted Chris Parrish several years ago when we first started wanting to do turkey calls, and Jason's like, I don't know a thing about making turkey calls. So he knew Chris Parrish's track record, as a stage caller, and he knew that he built diaphragms to a certain degree. But so he reached out to him. So Chris helped us kind of develop all these diaphragms. And then we end up giving him a signature series in there as well. But if some of the folks haven't heard of Chris Parrish, he's one of the most decorated competition turkey callers of all time. He's been inducted into the NWTF Turkey Hall of Fame. And then he's probably been building turkey calls for 3 decades. So
absolutely,
he knows what he's doing, and that's where you get a lot of that quality built into those diaphragms too. Is you got somebody that's just been doing it for so long, and they know all the tricks and tweaks that it takes to make a good turkey call.
Yeah, he for people listening in on this that they may not know that name, but you just say like the Michael Jordan of turkey calling. Been there, done that, and still can do it and very effectively. One of my favorite calls of his collection through you guys, they call it the Huckleberry. And it's a very light rasp. And what I love about it is you can get incredibly soft, in turkey verbiage. Like a lot of people don't understand. They may only hear a hen talk 3 or 4 sits out of 20, throughout that. But a hen is actually very, very vocal. Or a group of hens, especially a boss hen. they're always talking. But a lot of times they may be, 80 to 280 yards away. You're not going to hear it because they control their voice, just like you and I are talking on a microphone or a phone right now, is they control their pitch and their volume. And that's one of the biggest key features, or one thing if you wanted to take from this, is you don't have to be the loudest caller in the woods ever. And that's where that huckleberry is like so silky smooth and so rich. It's a little bit of a light rasp. It's an awkward cut if you were to look at it, but there's a reason that he's made that. And he has an incredible line. You guys call it the Parrish 3-pack.
Yep.
I think you guys, it's the manipulators in there, and I have them all spread out now. I should have actually organized these. The Kill Zone I know about. I haven't used that, but that would be a little bit like what we call a barking yelp,
Yep.
But yeah, that's an incredible dude, an incredible turkey hunter, and obviously a great relationship with you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, and that soft calling, you're talking about, is so effective. You get those days where birds are just not, they're not out there just gobbling everywhere, right? It's more of a subdued day. Hens are being quiet. So maybe you're going to set up along a field or somewhere where they're going to feed by and strut by. And, that soft calling, man, if you're sitting there, hitting it hard with your barking call, like you were saying, I mean, you're probably going to have less luck than if you just do that soft calling and almost under your breath sometimes. It's just real quiet.
And we just got wrapped up last week with our turkey podcast, basically going over equipment and some strategic tactics that we use here in the shop, not directing it just to archery hunters, but really being an archery shop. That's what we're pushing. And Jack and I talked a little bit about how sometimes less is more. And I don't want people to take that the wrong way. What I said, air quotes here, is I said sometimes less is more, like don't overcall. And I'm still very adamant on that. Like, I've even gotten to the point, nerdy on my Garmin watch, like I've set a timer. So I force myself not to overcall. But when we say sometimes less is more, that's also your volume knob.
Yes. Less
volume can be actually more intriguing to that tom, because they have to seek it out. They have to. It's just like, if there's an old lady at a concert just screaming and hollering top of your lungs, all you got to do is look over your shoulder and see that you don't want to go over there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But let's dive in a little bit. We talked about kind of your for the individuals who are new to the calling, and we talked about the straight deuce and the Casper. Let's dive in just a little bit more, and you can get the Casper in the Hunter Select 3-pack, which I think is probably one of your guys' most universal packs out there.
It is
everything that you'd ever want. If you wanted to come in and plop down a 20 and a 10 and grab some calls, those 3 calls will get you all season long. There's nothing that you needed more on that. We talked a little bit about the Parrish 3-pack. But let's get into the meat and potatoes, that boss hen, that Krabby Abby, that bird that's been 3-4 years, old into this deal and had a ton of clutches, and she kind of rules the roost. We all know that, the ladies rule the roost and we just follow. But you guys, I was going to ask you how long you've had the Raspy 3-pack, because it has one of my favorite calls, the Black Bat. The Sassy is a pretty cool call as well. And then also that Green Viper. If you're looking at it, it's like a snake tongue cut. The Raspy, that is a saucy 3-pack of calls.
Yeah. Yeah. People love that. And, we've had these calls in our lineup for years, but recently we've kind of started pairing them up in this last couple of years. We paired them up into these little 3-packs, the ones that, it seems like sometimes guys just love all rasp, and sometimes guys like a little bit of like nuance, like the Hunter Select. So it just kind of depends on what they're looking for. But But like you said, those suckers are raspy, and I love that black bat. I think that one's maybe one of my favorites besides that Casper. Casper's awesome. I love running that black bat too.
Yeah, it's like I said, that's the first call that I got my hands on from you guys. And the cool thing about buying these packs is we talk about 2023, everybody has a cell phone, right? Except for my grandpa, who still has a flip cell phone. He couldn't scan a QR code on the back. But we had a young lad come in. Yeah, I would say probably, late high school years, but very adamant on turkey hunting and always wants the new latest and greatest. And we seen him, our calls on a display right out in front of our main till area. Big, nice island, and then there our calls sit. And I seen all of a sudden he took his phone out and he's taking a picture of the back of it. I'm like, whatever, maybe he's doing a little bit of research. Well, what he did is he took a picture of that QR code and it popped up and there's instructions and he scanned that and it just led right to Phelps. And that's how he was doing his research. And all of these packs have that availability, and there are some detailed instructions so you can have just a little bit of help getting started on the diaphragm setup, more or less.
Yep. Yeah, Chris Parrish has 2 different videos that will link to that from that QR code that'll show you. So there's a video for beginners, just to show you how from the very beginning, you putting the diaphragm in your mouth and getting those first yelps. And then he's got an advanced video as well that takes you through all the other advanced calls. So I feel like that's super helpful. Because, it's really hard to put good instructions in written form on the back of the package.
Right.
And if anybody's like me, I usually tear the package open and throw it in the trash, and I never read the directions.
Exactly. Exactly.
But with that QR code, it's kind of something a little different, something a little new. It's like, oh, what's this? And then they can get that all that instruction. I think even some old seasoned vets, would enjoy a lot of that instruction there. I know we filmed that and I edited that video up, and man, the whole time I was just like picking up little nuggets from Chris on how to run those calls. So it was really cool.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, knowledge is the key, especially in situational calling. If a lot of turkey hunters will go out and hunt off the roost and that morning sequence, and they're gobbling on the roost, shot gobbling, and you can get them to respond pretty easily. And then they pitch down, and that's when you got to really portray like a performance scene to get the birds committed. Sometimes it happens in the first 10 minutes, and you are the Chris Parrish, the Michael Waddell of turkey hunting. Sometimes it's super easy. Sometimes you have to, sometimes it can be harder than elk hunting or deer hunting, a mature buck. These birds are so dumb that they're smart. I hate that. It's just the way it is. And I mean, you talk about like waterfowl hunters and goose hunters and that. You got to have a decoy spread. You got to have a visual appearance, and then you also have to have ears. And we talked about turkey hunting. Them are the turkey's 2 defenses. They have eyes, and they have really, really good hearing. If turkeys could smell, they'd probably be almost unkillable. You know what I mean?
Oh, definitely. We always laugh about that.
Exactly. But I mean, you have to be pretty versatile. And I say, especially for public land hunters, guys and gals that aren't blessed to have private ground and you still want to enjoy the turkey hunting atmosphere. Some of the best spots in Minnesota can be public ground, but that's where you're going to run into situations where birds have already been talked to. And a lot of times they've probably been talked to the wrong way. So they've been schooled. They've been, that is not what we need to do. We don't want to listen for that cadence. And if you ever, the best part is to YouTube, just type in, wild turkey calls, and there's hens that talk forever on there, and you can learn the dialect. You can turn, and then just kind of fitting the pieces of the puzzle together. Like, so what does that yelp mean? What does an excited yelp mean? What is a cut? What is a cluck? What is a purr? And we could sit here and and talk for hours on which one it is and, you know, break down that. But there's videos for you guys to listen to or watch that. We're just here talking about some of the coolest calls in the business. But I'm going to ask you, before I take out a couple calls here and make some sounds, some of the names on here, and you guys talked, I don't know if we talked about the Easy Clucker. I think we did. That's another really, really cool call. It's the meat eater with Phelps. That's the Easy Clucker.
It's got that ghost cut on it, and kind of like, it's real similar to that Casper. Little different latex configuration, but that's another fan favorite. People love that thing.
Yeah, and when he was talking about the cut, if you've never actually looked at a diaphragm call, come into the shop and you can see the different cuts in the top layer of latex, and usually that top layer is colored differently from the bottom. And then you can see the cut that we're talking about, rather it be a lizard tongue or a bat wing cut, or I call it a keyhole cut. You know, it looks kind of like an offset keyhole just a little bit. Yeah. I don't know where I was going on here I was going to ask you quick. Now, we invest some money and we have these calls and we go out on 3 or 4 turkey hunts and we're successful and we're done. This is not, no matter how great Phelps and the ingenuity and the quality material they have, there's still some care that goes into diaphragm. What are you guys prescribing? What do you do personally to take care of your diaphragm calls?
So first and foremost, we don't want to leave them sitting out on the dash of your truck, because the one of the biggest killers to diaphragms is the UV light on the latex. So that'll make it brittle, make it go bad. So that's a big no-no. And then another big no-no is storing them wet. So see a lot of folks, they'll get that new turkey call and it comes in that little. It maybe comes in, if they buy a single, it comes in a little plastic baggie, and they use it a little bit, and they're like, oh, that's cool. And then they put it back in a little baggie and seal it up when it's still wet. Mm-hmm. Well, what happens is your saliva has a whole bunch of things in it that latex doesn't like. So by putting it in that bag and sealing it up, it just makes that latex kind of just deteriorate. It just makes it kind of get loose. It loses all of its elasticity, and it just kind of gets kind of loose. And we've even had people send us pictures of their diaphragm that molded. You know, they're in a warmer climate. And they're like, hey, gee whiz, what the heck's going on here, man? My diaphragm molded, and they show us a picture in the bag. It's like, well, you put it away wet, and if you drink pop or, you know, eat weird food or whatever,
right,
and then put that thing away wet, it's going to, you know, all those little things and bacteria on there, it's going to make it mold. So if you can keep your diaphragm dry, and if you can keep it out of the sun, then you're going to make them last a lot longer. And then the third thing is just keeping it out of your mouth. So some guys and elk hunter guys, turkey guys are like this. They're like, yeah, I put my diaphragm in my mouth, and it don't leave my mouth until I get back home at night or whatever, you know. But,
right.
But leaving that call in your mouth there, again, that saliva is kind of the enemy. If you leave it in there saturated the whole time, the tape, that tape that goes around the outside edges of the diaphragm, well, the adhesive that holds that tape together, it will start coming apart. And if you're like me, if you leave it in your mouth, I tend to chew on them. I'll chew on that tape, and then pretty soon it's falling apart. So I've just made a real strict habit of, like, if I'm not actively calling turkey or actively calling elk, that thing comes out and goes in my little call pouch.
Yeah, there's a couple different call pouches, I guess you could say, depending on if you have an upgraded turkey vest. Sometimes they're incorporated right into it. I have a couple of them that are actually on like a lanyard, and I think it holds 6 different diaphragms. It's a flip over style. That let's say, you know, I'm going to take a break from calling, and yes, I can't sit here and tell you that I don't put one in and I have it in the side of my mouth when I'm not calling, and it stays there because it's always right there. But yep. one of the key things besides that little pouch to kind of store it in, and I you know, I set them out of the sun, but I let them dry out, and then I put them in that pouch. But I also have a hat clip, and it goes on the inside of the bill of my cap. And let's say I'm going to make a move, or I'm going to be just a little bit without calling. I can take it out of my mouth, and it's literally like 6 inches, 4 inches, and I put it right in that little clip. And there, it's drying on its own. It's not in my mouth, saliva, and then it's always literally just a small movement to put it right back in. Little things like that, because you know, if you've done enough of this turkey or elk hunting, you've set it down, and then it falls off your lap and it's on the ground, and then yeah, you're gonna have to clean it.
It's gone forever. Covered in dirt.
One of the myths I think I know the answer to, but I want to ask one of the pros out there that actually is making these. Is it a good idea in between hunts, or, you know, for year storage, that guys will get like a little seltzer? They won't dip it in mouthwash, but they'll have a little bit of some kind of good mint flavor on the bottom, and then they'll keep their calls out of the liquid, but store them in the fridge. Is that something you guys recommend, or you don't? Is that just a myth?
Yes and no. Yes, you want to keep, get optimum storage out of your diaphragms, store them in the fridge. That's a great way to do it. But you don't want to dip it in mouthwash or anything. If you want to clean your calls after the hunt or whatever, then just cold water. Cold water works really good. No soap. Just wash them off and let them dry real good on your dresser out of the sun. And then you can bag them up and put them in the fridge or even the freezer. And because you're away from, light inside there, and away from any kind of heat. Heat's another one that kind of tears them down. But and then some guys are real next level. They'll take their especially the turkey calls, because there's all those different layers. You got doubles and triple reeds in there. So they'll take a little toothpick. They'll cut a little toothpick off, and they'll stick in between each layer of latex.
Yep.
That way it lets each individual layer dry, and they don't stick together. And then when you pull it out, ready to go again, then it's going to sound perfect.
And that's the one of the keys. I'm glad you brought that up. So let's say you come into the shop and you buy a 3-pack or a single call, and you put it in your mouth as you walk out of the door, and you're driving down the interstate, and it sounds absolutely phenomenal. And you're chewing on it, and you're playing with it for 15, 20 minutes, and then you put it away and it dries. Depending on how you stored it, sometimes it'll take good 5 minutes to get that latex breathing. I guess the breathing's the wrong word, but to get it loosened up to where those actual reeds will separate, to get the full cut sound or that rasp tone. And a lot of people don't realize this, but any diaphragm that we pull out of the package, you can make 2 completely different tones. Now, don't distinguish that or distinguish it between pitch, but if you flip a call over in your mouth, you can get away from the rasp, and you can get a really young, subtle hen, that real high note. And sometimes that'll key, a gobbler will hear a different sound if you're running a rasp for 15, 20 minutes and things aren't rolling, and all of a sudden you change your tone. That tone, a higher octave, I guess you could say, will sometimes trigger it. So you can make multiple calls. I'm going to do something here. Let's shift a little bit away from your diaphragm setups. And I grabbed one of the slate / glass pot call. This is brand new in a package. You guys can hear me opening this up, and I'm just going to get it out. You talk to us about what we need to do when we get this brand new slate glass. And again, there's some things that you can read the fine prepping the surface, but just talk us through what we need to do. I got it in my hand here, and I'm going to follow your directions, and we'll make some sounds.
Okay. So you got the crystal over slate, glass over slate there?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So you pull it out of the package, and you look at all the beautiful artwork on that slate soundboard underneath. And you're like, man, that's pretty. And they got this real nice glass over it. And you're like, okay, you grab your striker, and it's like, man, I can't get any noise out of this.
Yep.
Well, you have to prep that surface, and it seems counterintuitive to do this because you like scratching up that beautiful call just seems like, well, that's not right. Like if you're new to turkey hunting, you're like, that's dumb. Why am I messing this pretty call up?
Which I'm doing right now, and I love every minute of it that you're explaining it.
So you grab so the call comes with a prepping kit. So there's a little prepping stone, and then there's a little like a scour pad, SOS looking pad in there. And what you want to do is you want to take that stone, and then you want to go back and forth horizontally, but you don't want to swirl it. So it's back and forth, side to side. If you swirl it, you're not going to get the right kind of tones, because when you're dragging that striker across, you want it to go across grain on those little marks that you've made on that glass.
Yep. So what I'm doing, what Dirk's explaining, I have this little pad, and what I'm going, just say I'm holding the pot in my hand, in my left hand, and I'm going right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, which is creating a grain, and I am ruining this beautiful little picture on here. But that's what, so now I have the grain going, I guess you could say horizontally, the way that I'm holding this call.
Yep.
So now I have what I call a striker or a pick. I have that in my right hand. Do I have to do anything with this?
Well, you have to kind of hold it just right. Now, a lot of times, new out of the box, you could do this. So that little scour pad, SOS pad, you could prep the striker, the little small part of it, the part you're going to rub against the glass. You can put that in almost like a pool cue, like you would you're going to put some chalk on a pool stick or whatever. You'd almost make that same emotion on that little pad there, and kind of rough it up a little bit, and then you get that thing ready to start dragging across that glass.
Perfect. So the striker, about the actual striker part, not the barrel, but the shaft of it is about the same size as a number 2 pencil. I know we're giving a lot of verbiage here we're painting a picture for you. So I have the striker, I'm right-handed. I have the striker in my right hand, holding it like a number 2 pencil, and then I have the actual slate, the pot, in my left hand. And then, do you have any techniques? Do you like to make circles? Do you go straight? What's your best bet?
So I'll take that. This is awkward for new folks, to learn the first little strokes, because I pick it up and hold it kind of like you would a pencil. Now, some people hold pencils weird.
Yeah.
So I will say that. But like the traditional way you would hold a pencil, and then you're going to want to set that striker on the glass, and you're going to want to put it straight up and down. And then I like to kind of tilt it away from me, kind of forward, kind of away from me a little bit, and get a little bit of angle to it. If you get too much angle, you won't get any sound out of it. Too little angle, you won't get quite the right sound out of it. So you'll have to experiment with that angle a little bit, but tip it forward or tip it away from you a little bit. And then I like to do half moons. So I'm doing a full moon, but most of my contact is a half moon. So I'm going to do counterclockwise, and I'm going to do draw a half moon on that glass. And then,
so I'm just doing what he's talking. I'm just going to play with.
Yeah. And then, on the downstroke where you're getting that yelp, you're going to want to maintain firm contact on the glass, but at the end of that yelp, then you're going to just relieve pressure. But if you pull the striker away from the glass and then place it on there again for your next moon, then sometimes it'll make a click noise. It'll go click, click, click. And you don't really want to do that clicking noise. So it's like a hard pressure on the yelp. And then as soon as you're done with that yelp note, I relieve the pressure, but I don't really take it away from the glass. So it's almost like and not really a moon. I'd almost say it's more of an oval that I'm drawing on this glass.
So just the basics. I'm just making a sound. We'll clean it up here a little bit. This is with the sound that he's telling you to kind of get to. But then if we clean it up to where so now you're producing a sound. I'm going to tip the microphone down here just a little bit. But we're producing that sound, but then you want to kind of clean it up So you have that high, low, out, high, low, out. So kind of a... And it sounds really grainy, but I'm purposely doing it, holding it that close to the micro. Could you hear that, Dirk?
Yeah. Yep.
So you could hear the pitch that we were making, that tone of the half moon, but then you could hear me kind of dragging that back to finish, and that's when we relieved that pressure that he was talking about. Now, everybody's going to have just a little bit different of a cadence, but earlier in a podcast, Dirk talked about how to make the purr. You want to explain that just a little bit on here?
So we're going to go back to holding that striker the same way. You're going to put it straight down there, and then you're going to kind of tip it forward a little bit. But for me, it's all in the angle to make that purr. And then you're going to just draw a straight line to yourself. And you're going to have to experiment with how much down pressure you put on the glass. I feel like it's a little bit different pressure than I'm using when I'm yelping. And I'm just going to just lightly drag that thing across grain, those grains that you scratched in that thing. You're going to drag them cross grain, and you're going to experiment with angle on that until you just get the right angle to where it makes a nice, smooth purr. And for me, sometimes if my call's not prepped right, if I haven't scoured it enough, then I don't get a good purr. So if you're not getting a good purr, you're making noise, but it's not purring like nice and smooth, then I go back to my prepping stone, and then sometimes I'll even use that little swatch of
those,
what are the
Scotch Brite,
the Scotch Brite, and clean it up with that. And
all right, so we'll try to make a purr for you here real quick. See if I can get it close enough to hear. Gonna completely act like a rookie. I should have done this before. I should have prepped it and done it before, and you got the sound that I wanted.
Well, it's a tricky call to make. It does take practice.
I'm trying to stand upside down here. So I'm not perfect.
I'll say,
yep.
And one thing I'll say too is, like, if you've been around pot calls a bit and you've played a few, then like the different strikers that you use, maybe that you're used to, are going to perform different than the next one. So there again, that's pressure and how much angle you put in that striker when you're pulling that thing back towards you. It's an experiment until you kind of got to nail it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm being dead honest with listeners right now. This is the first time that I've played with this particular call. and just like anything else out there, you're probably going to acquire over time 2 or 3 different strikers that you really, really like to make different pitches. Like when I set up on my slate to do a purr, I have what we call a fat bulb striker. So it's a really, really thin striker, but it's got a big fat bulb. And it's kind of just roughed up perfect enough that you can get that prrr, just that you're dragging it across those grains, and it's just a prrr, and then a pop. And once you hear a hen doing like a feeding purr or a calm purr, kind of in a group and birds are just kind of talking, you'll understand that, because it's different than a fighting purr. A fighting purr is the same kind of sequence, but just a little bit more aggressive. You agree on that?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
And then you can also, on a slate call, you can cut, and, you can get your excited cuts. And what I really like, I can already hear on this slate glass combo, is I can get a really excited, loud pitched cut, that may strike and turn that gobbler to you to get a hen. And a hen, when she's cutting, you want to explain a little bit of why a hen would do an excited cut?
Well, I think it's probably when they're kind of trying to compete with another hen, they start cutting and one hen's kind of kind of yelping or cutting over there. So the other one will start cutting and kind of competing for that gobbler's attention.
And that's basically 15 seconds of prep, grabbing the call. And I mean, we just made 3 completely different sounds for you. And you can do the same thing with the diaphragms. We're not going to get diaphragms out and play with that. But Dirk, it's your wealth of knowledge, and we're glad to be teamed up with you guys, Meat Eater and Phelps. We'll run over again just kind of what we carry in the shop. You guys are kind of open book. You can get a hold of the company or get on social media, and Dirk and the team can message you and kind of help you out if you're really not comfortable on what you want to get, or you can stop into the shop and there's somebody at every location that's going to be, very knowledgeable, especially since we've had these for a couple weeks. But we're talking about, I was going to ask you about the Steve's Jake break.
Yeah.
And the Janus, I don't even know how to say this. Latvian Eagle?
Latvian Eagle. So it's Giannis. So
Giannis.
Giannis is of Latvian descent. So, and Giannis and Steve Ranella, they have a lot of back and forth, with each other, and little nicknames for each other. And Steve will call Giannis, he'll call him Yanni, and he'll call it the Latvian Eagle sometimes, kind of a nickname. So I thought, you know what, so the one that Giannis likes is the Latvian Eagle, and they thought, that's a pretty fitting name to call it that. So,
and I love the first time I seen it, Steve Ranella, the Steve's Jake break. Like, what better name can you have for a turkey call, right?
I know. I seen that when they came back with the names they wanted to call them. I was like, that's brilliant. That's so good. I can't believe I didn't even think of that one.
And then we've like overhit the black bat. That's a bat wing cut. We have the Sassy Split V. We have the Green Viper. That comes in the Raspy 3-pack. You can get the Parrish. When we talked about his setups, Chris Parrish is his name. He has the Manipulator, and that's a full range of the Raspy Tree Talk. You cut in your raspiest. The Huckleberry, that's the one I was talking about, that's super, super rich and smooth, and you have a light rasp. So really your soft talk, that would be like my number one go-to. And the Kill Zone is a very raspy. We talked about the barking yelps. In your guys' Hunter 3-pack, we have a plethora. There, 3 different setups, including that Casper, to make a little bit of your higher, easier call. Really, really nice cuts on both the red and the blue, what we call the Trippin' Hen. And then another favorite name that then we see is called the Rippin' Red. It's red in color. You go to it. But in they're very eye appealing. There's a great assortment. It's just you guys have done an awesome job, and we're glad to be part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. You asked earlier about like where these crazy names and stuff come from. And we see this with elk calls, we see it with turkey calls. Somebody will say, we wanted to buy the turkey call. I had one last year that I really liked. Well, which one was it?
Exactly.
I don't remember. So we wanted to put some memorable names and then put the icons on them. That way, if anything, they're like, I don't remember, but I think it had a snake on it, or I had a ghost on it, or a bat on it. That way they associate those different things with the call they like. So.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, now that you bring that up, it's super easy. Like the plethora that we have here, it says, well, I had a Phelps call last year. Well, what color was it? Well, it was orange. Well, that narrows it down to either we had one of Chris Parrish's or we had one of the Meat Eaters, which is Giannis.
Yeah.
So, and like your Sassy V, it says Sassy V right on it. And it just is super, super easy to keep these. And this is something that you guys, if you take care of your diaphragms, if you take care of your calls, you can make a slate call last for until you want to give it to your grandkids if you take care of it.
Oh, absolutely.
But Dirk, I want to say thank you for coming on. you're doing some great things, and we're glad to have your calls in. We want to invite everybody out there, since we're kind of in the heart of turkey season all around across the country. Florida's, obviously a couple weeks ahead of everybody. I'm headed down to Missouri tomorrow night, and you guys out in Idaho and Washington. Actually, there's some of our customers that are, on their way out to visit you guys. So Nebraska, Kansas, Colorado, down in Texas in the red dirt country, in Oklahoma, all birds speak the same language, but just a little bit different on what you're hunting and when you're hunting. And you have to read your territory and read your birds too,
Yep, absolutely.
But you guys can get you can get online and check out Phelps Quality Game Calls. Kind of their slogan is getting them close, and that's exactly what we want to do. And also for all of you that, draw results are getting out in some states, and now we need to start planning on that elk sequence and learning how to run a diaphragm for not only your bugles, but your cow calls and your calf calls and sequencing that. And we'll probably get you on a podcast for that, Dirk, just with your wealth of knowledge in the elk. You shot some amazing bulls, and you got a story with designing calls with these guys. So they're out there, and they're tools that you definitely need to get used to using, and stop in the shop, check them out online. And Dirk, you stay with me, and on behalf of everybody at Archery Country, we appreciate you, and we'll see you on down the road. Thank you for listening to Archery Country Podcast.